This is your host, Carmen Radford, welcoming you back to another episode of the Calm and Chaos podcast, this space where we discuss everything from motherhood, relationships, and well-being to education, music, and so much more. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the Calm and Chaos podcast. Today we have a really special guest joining us. Artist Graham Pellow is here. Welcome, Graham. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yes. Looking forward to it.
Me too. Now we've had several chats.
More and more.
And it's always interesting. And I think we need to just go straight back to the beginning to get the full depth of your legacy. So what's the beginning for Graham?
Right. Well, okay. Let me tell you a bit of my history. I was born in Plymouth in Devon, born to a farmer, a market gardener, my father. Hard-working environment. Even from children, we were working on the land.
Mm.
And I was driving a tractor when I was 12 years old, and picked up an awful lot of skills.
Yes.
But when my father asked me, well, I think 16, 17, whether I wanted to join the business, the thoughts of picking Brussels sprouts when you're shaking the snow and the frost off, didn't really appeal to me as a long-term career.
Yeah.
So I then became an apprentice in the Royal Naval Dockyard in Devonport.
Wow.
We had a very large navy in those days, and it was a great apprenticeship. You couldn't get any better. Fabulous.
Wow.
But part of that was, if you're an apprentice, it didn't matter whether you're a barrel maker or whatever, you had to go to the Dockyard Technical College for 2 years. And during that period, I started to realize, although I hadn't done particularly well at school, I loved it, but I didn't do well academically. In fact, I thought I was a little bit thick. But they made you take exams, and I started to enjoy these exams, subjects that I really enjoyed. And just to make the point that I actually probably had the longest educational period between then and getting a degree later in life that you could possibly find. It was the longest route available. Anyway, so that was me. But I wasn't particularly happy in working in the Royal Navy, and I ended up even building guided weapons at one stage, and was really pleased to get out of that. But I always wanted to join the health service.
Yeah.
I found that a very interesting industry, and I did. But in doing so, I had to travel to London. We've had one child, and it was a big move, moving up to London from the West Country. But it gave me a 16-year career in the health service.
Yes.
And the health service can be hard.
Yes.
You can see some pretty awful stuff at times, but you do feel you're doing something that is really worthwhile and is very rewarding.
Yes.
But they kept reorganizing the health service, constantly change upon change. In some ways, that was good because it gave me great promotion opportunities, and I did end up at the top of a health authority as a technical officer. But then the next reorganization came along, and I thought, no, I can't cope with this. So I then became the chief engineer for British Home Stores.
Right.
Completely different experience.
Yes. What were you doing there?
Well, I used to look after maintenance and development of the stores for BHS. Around 150, 160 stores, traveling the country. Really fascinating. Retail is a very different industry to the public sector.
Yes.
Very fast moving, successful people get on very quickly. People who don't succeed out the door very quickly as well.
So this was moving from public sector
to private sector. Yeah, I mean, very different. Suddenly I've got a company car, I've got an expense account, I'm traveling around. Very, very different. But I enjoyed it. I got into that with a relish. But then I was reasonably successful in doing that, and I got headhunted to join a big property development company to build shopping centres. So we ended up over a 5, 6 year period building some of the biggest and best shopping centres in the country.
Right.
One lakeside shopping centre at its time was the biggest shopping centre in the country. And then one in Watford, which most people know as the Harlequin Centre.
Yeah.
And then another big one over in Bromley, the Glades in Bromley. So massive amounts of investment into shopping centres.
What was the budget for that? Like,
I've rethought that a little because it was 35 years ago, and I think it was close to £600 million worth of
wow,
investment. 35 years ago. I mean, massive amounts.
unbelievable. Hmm.
But then the property sector went through a very bad period,
Yeah.
and I survived longer than many, but I
Hmm.
ended up being made redundant.
Hmm.
Well, that was a bit of a shock. Never
Absolutely.
been out of work in my life. And I was 48 at the time, didn't
Hmm.
think it was a particularly good time to be
Hmm.
out of work. Uh, but when I went to the professional organization that was helping me to rewrite my CV and so on, they said, you'll have no problem with your background and as an engineer, you'll be in a job in no time.
Hmm.
They had a lot of people from the banking industry that were all made redundant at the same time, and boy, they had real trouble getting
Hmm.
jobs for them. So fortunately, I ended up with an offer of 2 jobs.
Tell us these jobs. This is
Yeah,
wild.
the jobs that were presented to me were quite amazing. It was a joy to be offered jobs because you do
Yes.
get worried. But one of them was the director of estates at the National Gallery. Well, as you'll know, and we'll talk a little later about,
Mm-hmm.
I'm an artist, so I thought, wow, that's got to be the job.
Yeah. Seemed perfect.
Seemed perfect.
Right.
So the other job I was offered was the same, director of estates at the Natural History Museum.
Those are wild
Yeah, they
opportunities.
were
What
fantastic.
an
So,
option.
so redundancy actually gave me an opportunity to
Hmm.
redirect my life, and so you never know what's going to come up, do
No,
you?
I love that.
Anyway, I said to the professional that was helping me, I said, I'm not, what's your opinion of these organizations?
Hmm.
And he said, well, if I'll put it this way, he said, the National Gallery, silver service,
Mm.
everything is perfectly correct, and there's lots of money flying around and good sponsors and so on. He said, the Natural History Museum is very different. Worldwide research, 350 scientists, all sorts of different characters, and of course, a big public entrance and so on. So, very different people. So I thought, yep, that's the one for me,
Yeah.
Natural History Museum. So I made the choice, and I have to say, it was the best job I ever had in my career.
Incredible. Very diverse. A
Oh,
lot of really interesting
oh,
research.
fascinating
Yeah.
people. I have met some of the most interesting people. I could go on forever
Yeah.
about the people I've met there. Fortunately, as well, was able to meet David Attenborough and
Wow.
a number of people like that. Some of the most focused scientists in the world
Right.
who have traveled the world and done the most amazing research. So, yeah, it was the best job I ever had.
That is fascinating.
It was.
And I would like to ask you a million questions about that, but that might be a whole episode. So you stayed there for some time,
Yeah, 10 years.
and then what was your final project, and what was the moment you knew that this has
It was
been,
over.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, during the process, I mean, it is a Grade 1 listed building of exceptional quality. To actually carry out work in that building was a challenge, but also a phenomenal thing to be doing. I was then, the final part of my career, I had the opportunity to build a major extension on the side of the Natural History Museum called the Darwin Centre.
Mhm.
Um, it is a challenge building a new building on one of the country's favorite, most wonderful
Mhm.
buildings. Uh, and it turned into a great success. It was built in 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2.
Mhm.
And at the end of phase one, we had developed phase two and it was being constructed, but it was the official opening of phase one and it was opened by the Queen.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to meet the Queen and take her around the building.
Wow.
Wow,
Mhm.
that was a moment. I'd always had a great regard for Her Majesty the Queen, a
Yes.
wonderful woman.
Yes.
And to meet her and take her around was just a joy.
Mm.
And I thought, I've had a great career.
Mhm.
What a way to top it off.
Yes.
And I thought, I think I'm done with this. I'm ready to go. I was 58, and I just thought, no. I had always planned to try and retire early,
Yes.
and what a moment to do it. I
What
thought, no.
yeah, going out on
The,
such a
the
high note.
organization tried to keep me to finish phase two, but I just thought, no, no,
Mhm.
this is the time to
Yeah,
go out on a high, and I've never regretted it.
that's
Never
incredible.
one moment regretted it. So,
Well, what I've learned about you is you always have that positive outlook
yep,
because from being these career changes, huge career changes through your life, um, it just seems that when there are changes and opportunities, you keep your head and heart about you
yeah,
and you keep persevering. So, going then into retirement,
yeah, yeah.
what
Well,
did that look like?
well, the interesting thing, as a senior civil servant,
Yeah.
I was given the opportunity to actually plan for my retirement,
Mm,
and they ran training courses to help you retire.
interesting.
Which actually is very, very good thing to do because
Absolutely.
that's a massive moment in your life
Yes.
where you're suddenly employed, long hours, and then overnight you're in a different place.
Yeah.
Well, that training course was fantastic. You met doctors, financial advisors, and philosophers, and whatever
Wow.
about your future, and it
Mhm.
was fantastic. And I always remember one. We were asked around the table, "What plans have you got for your retirement?" And one of the guys next to me,
Mhm.
obviously a senior civil servant, said, "Well, I've planned to clear out and tidy my garage." What? I thought, "You're joking." I know he was joking to some degree,
Yeah,
but when pressed, he had no other ideas of what
right.
he was planning to do in his retirement. And I think that's actually quite dangerous.
Mm,
And I know a number of people who have struggled after retiring.
right.
So they came to me and I said, I have a very clear idea of what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a studio and I'm going to concentrate on my art, painting, and that's exactly what I did.
Yes,
And it led me down a route which really became almost a second career.
absolutely.
Mm.
Art has taken you around the world, hasn't it?
Yep, yep. My ill-gotten gains have been spent with a lot of traveling. I've traveled all over the world, and my wife and I have visited some of the most, even places like Myanmar, which we traveled to not
Wow.
that long ago before there were all the problems there.
Mhm.
So we have been all over the world, and I've painted all over the world.
Yes,
Uh, I've absolutely loved it, and it's opened up an awful lot of doors for me.
yes.
I didn't think I would teach, but I was pressed by a couple of people. Would I teach? Well, okay. 14 years later,
You've taught.
I'd been teaching them for 14 years, and they become friends,
Yes.
and you learn a lot about each other, and always felt like cheating. I mean, I teach them for 2 hours. My wife would often complain about the laughter and fun that was going on in the studio, and then
Learning should be fun.
it was, oh, it was. But then they would pay me, and I thought, wow, well, this is nice.
What a great
But no, I met so many different people,
what
and I absolutely loved it. And I've been fairly successful. I've
yes, you
sold
have.
paintings. I have paintings all over the world, in fact.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a joy. It's a
Graham,
joy.
what's a significant moment in teaching for you?
Well, I've had a few. I had one girl. I mean, I've taught everybody from children, young children.
Yeah.
I've done,
Art teachers.
yeah, yeah. One was a particularly interesting. As a teacher who was an art teacher, and she came to me for some lessons, and I thought, well, that's a bit strange. But I soon learned that she'd actually lost her confidence.
Hmm.
And it was predominantly because when she was at school, she was bullied by her colleagues, believe it or not, the teachers.
Sad.
And she had a nervous breakdown. And during those hours that we were talking, you get very close to each other. You understand a lot about each other. And she told me that she'd had this nervous breakdown. And then she left the area and she sent me the most wonderful letter. And she said, Graham, I don't think you realize what you did for me. She said, during those 2 to 3 hours we used to spend together every week, she said, we had to concentrate on the art. And for that reason, all my other problems in life disappeared. And I continued with my art, and it helped me so much. And I don't think you realized how that has helped me so much. And that is a fact.
Hmm.
You have, if you're going to be a good artist, even a reasonably good artist, you have to concentrate on what you're doing.
Yes,
And if you have mental health problems, depression or concerns,
it can help.
you have to concentrate. And so therefore the hours fly away,
Yeah.
and your problems can get a lot smaller as a result.
Yes, and as we've talked about, I see the same thing in music,
Mm,
in piano, teaching piano, in singing, in getting lost in music in various
absolutely.
ways and making connections. But what I've learned from speaking with you is when you become an artist in whatever way that looks for you, you can have quite a profound shift in perspective.
Mm,
And you told me a story, I think you were in China and
mm.
you had a camera with you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
share this story with us because I
It,
love
it is it is an interesting story because I mean I've sketched all over the world in some of the bizarre situations, but when I'm on a trip with my wife, very often I'm the last person hanging on behind because I've got a sketchbook and I'm taking in all the details, sometimes even painting. And we were visiting a small temple, and a woman who came out of the temple, having looked at it, came out to me and she said, Graham, she said, you've got a beautiful camera around your neck. She said, why do you stand there sketching?
it.
So I said, well, tell me what you've just seen. She said, well, it was a very nice little temple. And I said, well, what was in the foreground of the temple? She said, I don't know. And she tried to turn around. And I said, don't turn around. I said, if I tell you there were three beautiful bonsai trees, small, medium, and large, in beautiful porcelain containers, she went to turn around again. And I said, no, 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 don't turn around. I said, what was behind the temple? She said, I don't know. I said, if I tell you there was a range of mountains that at the moment with the sun on them is beautifully blue, and I said, there's an orchard next to it, and the yellow leaves of the trees are
Mhm.
being hit by the light and they're looking stunning. So she slowly turned around and she looked at it and she said, now I understand why you sketch and paint.
Yes.
She said, I would have walked by that without even seeing it.
Hmm.
And that is the thing, particularly about landscape painting. It enriches your life
Yes.
because you look at it in a completely different way. And I've had students where I've said to them, you know, how art can actually enrich your life, and they can look you a bit strange when you say that, and it sounds a
At
bit
first.
grandiose. But after 2 or 3 months of
Mhm.
painting, they'll say to you, do you know, you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
I'm now saying to my husband, look at the way the light's coming through the cloud and hitting those trees or what.
Mhm.
And she said, yeah, they will tell you that they're seeing things that they will have walked past
Yeah.
previously in their life.
Yeah.
So it does enrich your life. It really
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah, and it makes you more self-aware. It's you're in tune with your senses.
Yep.
And something that this is very profound to me. When you talk about being that much in the moment, you've told me about times, being, say, in an airport, or it could be, you're stuck in a lineup or traffic or whatever it
Yep.
is. And if you have that cognitive awareness
Yep.
to be
Yep.
fully present and
Well,
aware of your
a bit of it is
surroundings.
people watching. I know you
Yes.
enjoy people watching. I do.
Yeah.
I find observing people the most fascinating
Yeah.
thing. Uh, so I'm never bored. I've got a sketchbook and a
Right.
pencil.
Never bored.
Somebody, who has a 1 hour delay in their flight or 2 hour delay. Oh my goodness. For me, no, I just get the sketchbook out and I'm
Right.
sketching people in the airport.
Right.
But you, art can make you interact with people in a very different way. It sort of opens a number of doors. And I will tell you a story, which is a fascinating story.
Okay.
I was on the South Coast. My wife uh, used to line dance, and my wife has always been very supportive of my art. And often when I'm painting, she will get her book out and she'll sit and read, and she's very, very good at that. Well, she used to line dance, and they used to go away for a week down to the East Coast, the South Coast. And I said, okay, you support me, I'll support you. You do your line dancing, and I'll go away and paint. Well, I was painting a famous scene, the White Cliffs of Dover, basically, or the White
Oh.
Cliffs there, Seven Sisters, it's called.
Yep.
And I was sitting on a little bench painting, and I was aware this couple came by, and they started looking at me, but looking at the bench almost. And then they took out 2 cans of gin and tonic, tapped them together, and sort of celebrating something. So I said, "Oh, something to celebrate?" They said, "Well, not exactly." They said, "The seat you're sitting on, actually, if you look at the label at the back, is there to commemorate my grandfather,
Oh.
and he would have been 100 today." I
Wow.
said, "Wow, that is amazing."
Yeah.
So we got into conversation, and they said, "Oh, can we see what you're doing?" So I said, "Yeah, of course." So they looked at it. Oh, Seven Sisters. This was my grandfather's most favorite view, looking out over the Coast Guard's cottage and the cliffs. So they said, "Oh, can we have your details?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." I passed on the details. Anyway, about a week or so later, I got a telephone call from uh, the man and his wife, or the man particularly, and he said, "It's my mother's 80th birthday. It may have been 70th. I'm not quite sure.
Mm.
Uh, I'd like you to do a painting
Mm-hmm.
of that particular scene because it was clearly her father's most favorite scene."
Yeah.
So I said, "Yeah, of course I can, no problem." So we agreed how I was going to do it and so on. Within another week, I got a call from his mother, and she said, Graham, she said, "I've heard it. My son met you." And she said, "It's a scene I've always loved. Could you do a painting for me?" And I thought, oh dear, she doesn't know. So I said, "What?" I said, "I will promise you
A painting.
I will do a painting for you." But I said, "I am so busy at the moment, I can't get round to it, but I will do one." So we exchanged details. Anyway, I then got in touch with her son, and I said, "You're not going to believe this." She's, "Oh my goodness," he said. Anyway, so I agreed to meet her son at Trafalgar Square to pass over the painting. And as I was there, I was doing a painting, standing on the corner, and it was a reasonably good picture of Trafalgar Square. Anyway, so I hand over the painting. He's very happy with it and so on. I used to have one-man exhibitions every 2 years, and I was running this exhibition. And who came through the door? This woman. She said, "You won't recognize me, Graham, but I'm the lady whose painting of the Seven Sisters you did for me." Wow. So we had a big hug, and she traveled all the way from near Eastbourne to come to this exhibition.
Wow.
It was amazing. Anyway, I'm taking her around the exhibition, and there's the painting of Trafalgar Square. So I said to her, "I did that painting when I was handing the painting over to your son."
Yeah.
She said, "Wow, I don't believe it. I've got to buy it."
Yeah.
So she ended up buying that painting.
Wow.
And then a short while, and I forgot the little bit. I got a photograph from her son of her getting the painting on her
Whoa.
birthday. And of course, then she sent me a message and she said, "Now I know why you weren't prepared to
Yeah.
do the painting for me because you'd already got one commission." So
Oh,
it was wonderful. And it was a perfect sort of
yes.
circle of how an event like that, a casual meeting, can turn into such a circular
Connection.
connection, and we
Absolutely.
still keep in touch. I mean,
Oh,
it's just wonderful.
that is
Yeah,
amazing.
you end up with a painting that suddenly feels very, very emotional about.
Absolutely. And this is, I've seen your sketchbooks, I've seen a lot of your paintings. I have one of your beautiful paintings on my wall. And we've been very slow to put art up in my house because I really love the idea of knowing it just being meaningful
Mm,
and in evoking something in you.
absolutely.
And my husband chose the one that we put up, and every time we look at it, it obviously reminds him of some happy memories looking
Mm,
at that.
absolutely.
And for me, it's my new home, and that's really special. And the little animals in it remind, like, that's what the kids grasped.
Yeah.
And my kids love nature. And so the other ones that we've put up are, I've told you about my art teacher from grade 6 and 7, and she still does art, and she's almost your age. And she says the same things, that it helps with mental health, that it is a different way of looking at the world. And I can still remember some of the art skills she taught me, and she was my favorite teacher, and my kids call her auntie now. And she's
Lovely,
so wonderful. but
lovely.
but now I've got her art, I've got your art. And I think, if you can create a home where the things on the walls give you that burst of
Absolutely,
joy.
absolutely. Well, you can imagine how rewarding it is when you meet somebody that you haven't seen maybe for a number of years, and they
Mhm.
will say to you, "Oh, we love your
Yeah.
painting
Yes.
uh, on the wall. It still reminds us of a moment," and
Yes.
so on. I mean, you'd almost do it for nothing anyway because it is so important to people, but it
Yes.
gives you a joy. I mean, it's a wonderful
Yes.
feedback to feel that you've achieved something that people will love and enjoy,
Yes.
and often for many, many years.
Yes.
I mean, it's a great feeling. It's good for your mental health,
It
that is for
is.
sure.
And Graham, you went to the doctor recently.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you that story. It's happened twice recently. I went to a physiotherapist as well
Okay.
recently, but I went to the doctor. I have had 14 months of ill health with polymyalgia rheumatica, which
Mm.
destroyed me for about 14 months. It was really nasty. Anyway, I went to see the doctor, and of course, as they always do, pulls up your date of birth. And then she started looking at me and she said,
It's not right.
"Mr. Pellow," she said, "how do you look like you do at 79?
Give us your secrets.
Yeah, tell me your secrets." She said, "Can I pass it on to some of my patients?"
Yeah.
So I said, "Well, I suppose one of the things is I've just got lucky DNA. I mean, if you do look younger than you are, well, some of that is just lucky DNA." But I did say, I do balance my life, I think, in the right way. I keep myself physically fit
Hmm.
by playing golf.
Hmm.
That's a 7 or 8 mile walk. I'm not pounding the pavements and giving myself injuries, but uh, I also have a social life with that. My wife plays golf, and we have a lot of social connections at the golf club, so that's great. But I also garden. I'm a creative, and with my background with my father, I mean, I love my hands in the soil. I love propagating plants and so on. So in the summer, it's a joy. I love it.
Hmm.
But then the winter comes and it rains heavily, or it's snow or frost, and my golfing friends say, "Oh, what are we going to do now?" And I
You
say,
say, I know what I'm
"No problem to me. I'm straight up in a nice warm studio,
Yeah.
some music in the background, and I'm painting."
Yes.
So I've got pretty much everything in my life sorted out, in most respects. And she did say, "Yes, you're right. A balance in life like that, where you fill it properly, and it is important. It's
It is.
important to your mental health and to your physical health."
Yes.
So, yeah, I do believe I've got it pretty much sorted out.
Absolutely. You have told me that one of your favorite things to paint is landscapes.
Yeah,
Tell me what it means to you to have that magic moment in the morning.
yeah, yeah. Well, if we go away on holiday, and we haven't traveled a lot, my wife finds one of the benefits of being away and being on holiday is she can stay in bed a little bit longer and have a later breakfast. Well, not me. As soon as the sun rises, I'm out. I've even climbed over a hotel gate 5 o'clock in the morning to get out there. And it is a magic moment in time. They call it the golden hour. It is. It's wonderful. But I can be out and paint, hopefully a successful painting, come back at 9 o'clock, 9:30, and
Mhm.
have breakfast. And I've had a day. I've had a successful day. I'm buzzing. I've come back with a nice painting if it's gone well, and the rest of the day is just a bonus.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I mean, for me, that is a joy, and just sometimes just being there as the sun's coming up, and particularly if your painting's going well, it is just wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. And I know I explained to you once before, I was doing that. One of the downsides of that is time just disappears,
Yeah. 'Cause
flies
you're in the
away,
moment.
and it can often, lead you into trouble. And I was due to go back to the hotel at breakfast, and we were in a party that was going to do other things during the day. And I looked at my watch and I thought, oh goodness, I need to be back in the breakfast room now. So it was a watercolor painting, and I couldn't close the sketchbook up because it was still wet. So I'm running through the village or the town, trying to get back to the hotel with this book open for the paint to dry. So I get into the restaurant, heavy breathing, and put the book on the table. And then, of course, people are interested, and so the waitress came over and had a little look at it. And she, oh, that's wonderful, that's lovely. And then she proceeded to spill a cup of coffee all over the painting. She was distraught. So we managed to get the tissues on and retrieve it a bit. She was not happy, but I
Mhm.
said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." For me, I look at that painting now, and it was a nice painting, but the coffee stains on there just remind me of a
It's a
moment in
memory.
time. They
Yes.
don't have to be brilliant paintings. They can remind you of a moment that
Yes.
floods back to you. And
Yes.
every picture in my sketchbooks, I can open them up 15, 20
Yeah.
years later, and everything floods back to you.
Takes you back.
And it's a joy. It's
Yeah.
a joy.
Yeah.
Better than a photograph. I mean, a
Yeah.
photograph takes 20 seconds.
Mhm.
Uh, a painting, I could be
You
standing
can
there
be
for
immersed in it.
2 hours, 3 hours, and it will stay in your mind forever.
Yeah. And a similar story that you had told me before, it was raining and the raindrops got on your painting,
Yes, yes.
and something happened at my house that really reminded me of that, and I wanted to tell you because my kids were coloring just with felt pens and water spilled all across the page.
Yep.
And they looked at it and they didn't get upset. They just went, "That looks kind of cool, Mom." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Let's put it on the radiator for a minute. Let's let it dry." Dried, and it looks now like a watercolor painting
Yes,
of the
yes,
beach.
yes,
And
yes.
my son and my daughter, they just go, "This looks amazing. Doesn't this look like the beach we went to?" And it just really reminded me of that story
Oh, yeah,
because don't
absolutely.
cry over spilt
No,
milk.
no, no. I mean, I have painted in some bizarre places when the weather's been very bad or whatever. And the one you're talking about, I went on to Dartmoor, and that is a place I absolutely love. It was where I was brought up. And I started this watercolor painting. And of course, watercolor is terrible if it rains. And the next thing, blob, blob, all over the
Mhm.
painting. And I took it back home and I looked at it with my sister and my wife, and oh, yeah, I can see what happened there. Anyway, I thought tomorrow I'm going back to the same place. And I actually painted a very successful painting of the same scene the
Mm.
next day. However, when I show the original painting with all the blobs all over it to people, often they'll say to you, "Actually, I prefer that one
For
because
me.
it's a moment, isn't
Yes.
it?" And I keep it and I laugh at it now because yeah, it is, and it reminds me very much of that moment when I
Yeah.
just had to give up and rush back to the car. Yeah, they're great. Even
Yeah,
bad paintings sometimes can be a good memory of the
absolutely.
moment. So
Absolutely.
yeah, never give up on it. Never give up on it.
Absolutely. Well, my takeaway always talking to you is you use the word joy a lot,
Mm.
and I think that's such a huge purpose in life is finding the joy, the little joys, the big joys. But at the end, I always ask my guests, what is something that helps you stay calm in all the chaos? What's a takeaway for everyone?
Well, certainly one of them is family. Family to me is the most important thing in my life, without a doubt. Um, we help each other through good and bad times,
Mhm.
and that is incredibly important to me. But I think I've always had a positive outlook on life.
Mhm.
I try to deal with life as it comes along and not worry too much about the negative parts of life. Um, I try to see the positive in almost anything if I can. It's
Mhm.
very easy to get depressed or dragged down by things that are going on, but there's always a positive slant to it as well.
Yeah.
And the funny part of that, I know I've mentioned to you before, is yeah, I'm short. I'm very short, but I'm not in my head. In my
Mhm.
head, I'm a big, you know, beefy man. Uh, and then I see a photograph of me in a family or
That.
a social, and I say, "Who's that short man there?" Oh, it's me. And I know it sounds funny, but it is your mental approach towards
Yeah.
maybe a negativity. You don't have to accept it.
Mhm.
I'm 80 now. I had to go through an 80th birthday, which was lovely with the family, but I'm not 80 now.
Yeah.
I just don't allow myself to think of that in a negative way.
Yeah.
And I think that as a mindset is
Yeah.
probably one of the most important things. Don't let yourself be obsessed by the bad things in
Yeah.
life. Try to see the positive. There is always a positive around the corner.
Mhm.
There is always a way of looking at things in a
Mhm.
better way. And certainly my family helped me to do that. I
Mhm.
mean, we support each other throughout everything, good and bad.
Mhm.
And it's very, very important.
You can be the positive light in the dark, regardless of what's
You
going
can,
on.
and I'm fortunate enough to have a little bit of cash around now, and I've been able to help my family as well in
Wonderful.
many ways. And they don't expect it, which also is very helpful. But
Mhm.
I've helped them through tough times, and I've been able to support my grandchildren when they want to get into property and so on.
Wonderful.
Those things can have a big effect on them, but
Yeah,
also gives you a great feel and is good for
absolutely.
your well-being as well. So
Absolutely.
yep, I hope to keep my positive views on life going. I hope.
You will. Well, thank you for this. There's so many takeaways for the listeners, and thank you for sharing your legacy.
No problem.